think my microphone's on. Wow, that's bright. Hello? Ah, there we go. Thank you so much for attending. We apologize. Actually, I should apologize for keeping us from starting our service. It was running a little bit late today. So, if you can, we're going to go ahead and get started with some praise and worship. If you'd like to rise, sing some songs with us, we'd appreciate it. We're going to be singing Country Roads. Almost heaven, West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountains, Shenandoah River. Life is old there, older than the trees, younger than the mountains, growing like a breeze. Country roads take me home to that place I belong. West Virginia, mountain mama, take me home. Country roads, all my memories gather round her. Miner's lady, stranger to blue water, dark and dusty, painted on the sky, misty taste of moonshine, teardrops in my eye. Country roads take me home to that place I belong. West Virginia, mountain mama, take me home. Country roads, da-da-da-da. I hear her voice in the morning hour, she calls me. The radio reminds me of my home far away. Driving down that road, I get the feeling that I should have been home yesterday. Yesterday, country roads take me home and to that place I belong. West Virginia, mountain mama, and take me home. Country roads, let's go one more time. Take me home, take me home to that place I belong. West Virginia, mountain mama, take me home. Country road. Right on. All right, good morning. Can we give it up for Hyung Ju Hyung over here on the guitar? He is a true gentleman. He prepared a really wonderful song list and a performance song for y'all, but I am not the best partner and didn't do my due diligence to triple check. And I apologize to you and to you, Hyung Ju Hyung, for putting in the time and energy to create this wonderful list of songs so that we could have the right environment to be together as a community and worship God. So we're gonna keep this energy up. How does everybody feel after that song? We're good? Awesome. I believe this is our last Sunday before the last Sunday of this month, right? Yeah, so let's do our best to really praise God for June. Next song we're going to be singing is Spring Song of Eden. Three. Okay. Cool. Come, O ye friends, to the Garden of Eden, where the spring blossoms are best. Joyfully singing together our song, friends in our Eden songs of delight, joyfully dancing together with song. Friends in our Eden rejoice. Here in the garden together we'll dance, singing new songs of joy. Come, O ye friends, to the Garden of Eden, where joy and happiness reign, joyfully sharing together our love. Here in the Garden of Peace, come ye, O come to the gardens, my friend, singing new songs. From the top, one more time. Come, O ye friends, to the Garden of Eden, where the spring blossoms are best, joyfully singing together our song. Friends in our Eden regain. Here in the garden together we'll meet, singing new songs of joy. Come, O ye friends, to the Garden of Eden, singing new songs of delight, joyfully dancing together with song. Friends in our Eden rejoice. Here in the garden together we'll dance, singing new songs of joy. One more with passion. Come, O ye friends, to the Garden of Eden, where joy and happiness reign, joyfully sharing together our love. Here in the Garden of Peace, come ye, O come to the garden, my friends, singing new songs of joy. Wow, thank you so much for that. Right on. Good morning. Thank you for those who are just walking in. It's nice to see some familiar faces. Thank you so much for being here today. Let's go ahead and celebrate one another. Why don't you go ahead, turn to your left, turn to your right, say hi, say hello. It's all good. Yeah, we'll go say hi, and then we'll do our song, and then we'll do the performance song. We'll just change it up. Yeah. Huh? Oh, come on, man. No, you're welcome. If anything, I'm doing literally the minimal. How are you today? Hello, my brother. Great, thank you so much for that. I saw so many wonderful interactions. Look at that, conversations are still happening. Beautiful. Thank you again, y'all. We have a couple songs before we continue on with our service this morning. And the first song, we definitely want you to sing along, so feel free to join us. And this is Unite. All right. Unite into One. Classic. Great. Chase away the power of Satan, far away beyond the land and sea. Build for God a boundless kingdom, giving joy and liberty to all. Come, ye people all around the world, let's unite into one, spreading forth the glory of the Father and His great will forevermore. Unite, unite, unite into one. Bring about one nation, uniting all the people of the world. Raise the white cross on our banner, high upon Mount Everest it waves. In the blue Pacific waters, cleanse the sword that brought the victory. Come, ye people all around the world, let's unite into one. Now resolve to end the deep resentment of the long centuries past. Unite, unite, let's unite into one. Bring about one nation, uniting all the people of the world. Build a fortress to defend the peace on the great new heaven and new earth. We will all sing hallelujah, safe within the bosom of the Lord. Come, ye people all around the world, let's unite into one. Share the joy and glory of heaven, hidden so long from every eye. Unite, unite, let's unite into one. Bring about one nation, uniting all the people of the world. One more time. Unite, 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 let's unite into one. Bring about one nation, uniting all the people. Bring about one nation, uniting all the people of the world. Amen. Thank you so much. Feel free to have a seat. We have one more amazing song for you today, prepared for my elder brother here, Hyungju Hyung.
Okay, so I did not expect to sing. I prepared just to play guitar, which is my fault, part of my fault. I just realized that James didn't know this song. So again, I didn't practice singing at all, but I'm just gonna try. Since I prepared, yeah, just gonna, yeah, but yeah, don't expect too much. Just gonna start the lyrics and just prepare for the service yourself, and with the prayer, not with my voice. Okay. All right, I'm gonna try. The song is called the Blessed Be Your Name. Blessed be your name in the land that is plentiful, where your streams of abundance flow. Blessed be your name. Blessed be your name when I'm found in the desert place, though I walk through the wilderness. Blessed be your name. Every blessing you pour, I will turn back to praise. Where the darkness chosen in, Lord, still I will say, blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. Blessed be your name when the sun is shining down on me, when the world is all as it should be. Blessed be your name. Blessed be your name in the road that marked with suffering, through the very pain is offering. Blessed be your name. Every blessing you pour, I will turn back to praise. There the darkness chosen in, Lord, still I will say, blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. You give and take away, give and take away. You give and take away, you give and take away. My heart will choose to say, blessed be your name. You give and take away, you give and take away. My heart will choose to say, blessed be your name. Blessed be your name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be the name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be the name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be the glorious name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. Thank you.
Give him another round of applause. Whoa, there's no way I would have sang it as well as you, my friend, even if I had prepared. That was amazing. Seriously. Wow. Thank you so much, Hyungjin Young. Wow. No, that was really a treat to get to watch somebody else sing with such passion and talent, really. Wow. Especially that crescendo at the, oh man, that was great. Thank you so much for that. Give him another hand, please. He wasn't expecting to do that at all, and he's a champion about it. So, going to pray real quick to officially open up our Sunday service. So please join me in prayer. Dear Heavenly Parent, true parents, good morning. Thank you for this beautiful day that we have. The sun is coming out, and we are here amongst friends and family, and maybe new acquaintances, new people that we shall meet today that you're guiding us to interact with. And Lord, I think that's really one of the most important aspects of community, of church, of having a congregation, of having a service weekly. It's to not only have ourselves be realigned and tuned to your rhythm, God, but to spread your joy and your love with one another and to encourage and support each other as well. I'm really grateful to be here today with all these brothers and sisters and to celebrate the ascension of one of our family members in the DMV area, as well as understand the message that Dr. Selig has prepared today. Really pray that we can open our hearts, open our minds, and allow our spirits to really resonate and receive your wisdom for today, Lord. So thank you. I offer this prayer up in our names as Blessed Central Families, and in my name, Holbrook James William Jenkins, son of Michael and Reiko Jenkins, of Blessed Central Family. Aju. Thank you so much, everyone. And we'll go ahead and have today's reading. So if I can, please give a round for Reverend Werner Seubert to do our morning reading.
Good morning. We're living in the middle of summer, so it's take off your tie weather. And thank you very much, Captain Kim, for filling in. Even though you were put on the spot here, you did very well singing this beautiful song. Today I want to read something from our True Father's words. I owe this to something posted by one of our former pastors, Pastor Hiroshi Goto, who posts things from time to time, or it seems almost every day actually. And it's taken from The Way of God's Will and the World and titled True Successor. And it kind of shows probably True Father's mindset. Better? Okay. About how he looks at what he's doing. He says, a wise person will go all the way once he has made a commitment. Those who only go halfway will be awarded no victory. Only those who persevere to run through all the way until the very end will be victorious. In doing God's will, I have determined to go the primary and first path. The primary and first path, which is the steep one, the straight one, not waiting for a circuitous secondary route. In doing God's will, I've determined to go the primary and first path. For the sake of my followers, I took every precaution and reviewed everything about the principle many times. I wanted to be absolutely sure that this is the true way of God. So True Father says, I'm not asking you to do something that I haven't checked and double-checked and triple-checked. It's the only way. Like a good researcher, tests and retests to make sure of his results before he announces his findings to the world. I have tested this out in every possible way. You can see then what an incredible discovery I have brought to the world. As committed soldiers who have signed this written pledge to God, I would like you to go forward all the way, not just halfway. I am waiting for the kind of champion who can go further than me and defeat me. So Father looks for someone who will take on that banner and even be better than him. Many times I have thought that I cannot afford to die. I know that even at this stage, there is no one in whom I can bequest this mission as my successor when I would retreat from the front line. So there's no one there in 1977. No one has given me that comfort and conviction that I could pass on my mission. I question to myself, asking who will love God as much as I have loved him after I'm gone? Who will look after my God? Who will serve and love him as filial son or daughter? This is my only concern. Is there anyone who could truly say, Father, let me take care of your God, so you can stand behind me in the background and I go forward? The person who can live up to this statement will be the center of the mainstream of history and will never perish. And his descendants will prosper like the descendants of Abraham did. I cannot afford to leave the world as it is, destined to more suffering and destruction. I must leave behind a world that is being resurrected. I want to complete the foundation of this movement in my lifetime. As long as I live, I determine to bear the burden of all sufferings, bitterness, criticisms, like storm and persecutions, so that after I leave, the persecution will be finished, will be over. I've been praying, please let me carry all the burden. I think with that heart, our true parents really show themselves to be the true parents, wanting to leave no persecution, no burden behind. They want to digest and overcome everything. As your generation, speaking to us, reaches its maturity, our movement will soar into prosperity. How about you? Do you wish to leave this movement because you cannot bear the persecution? Or do you welcome greater challenge and persecution? With greater challenges, the greater victory and result you will gain. You're determined to take on all the difficulties and challenges and digest them. Which of the two do you choose, to leave or to carry and overcome all the challenges? So this is really the frame of mind that our two parents have worked with and really explained it perfectly in these few passages. Thank you for listening to the words of our two parents.
Thank you, Reverend Warner. You know, it's interesting, as I was sitting there, and as Reverend Warner was sharing those words, just amazed me, I guess, to think of how much our relationships have grown. And I don't know, for some reason, I just really felt this, seeing him as like a father figure for me. And so it was a pleasant, very pleasant experience. I felt like, wow, what a close in heart we've become spiritually. And yeah, thank you for sharing those words with everyone here. And I think definitely in my life, when I've tried my best to, I guess, live for God and live for others, it's definitely opened up so many possibilities, so many things that I wouldn't have been available to me. So it's great to be reminded. That being said, I would love to introduce to you guys our main speaker for today, for our service. Dr. Selig has prepared I think an empowering topic, an empowering sermon for everyone to share today, to segue into this afternoon's activities. So I'm excited to hear this. I pray that we can really open ourselves up to him, and if you can give him a nice warm welcome and bring him on up to the stage. Thank you. Put your hands together.
The clicker. Good morning, everyone. You can't believe how bright the light is. I see the light. I'm going to be seeing it all day. Which button do I push? The right one? Well, the music was fantastic, wasn't it? Let's give it up again for James and for Hyungju. You guys did a great job. Well, I am speaking about Spirit World, and it's an interesting coincidence that this afternoon we will be having a Seunghwa ceremony for our brother, Mr. Ho, who passed away a number of days ago. It's a very, very important topic, and I hope that everybody here will, I mean, you're already experts in spirit world. I mean, you wouldn't be here if you already didn't have some kind of an experience, some sort of education or personal experience where God did touch you. So you already know spirit world. So what I share, what my wife and I have been working with for many years now, dealing with the Sunghwa ceremony, I guess it's sort of like, it's just something like it's an important ritual that we need to have some kind of standardization so that we're doing it the same way in the different countries. And this is the tradition that we have received from the true parents. So our understanding all comes from true parents, and it's important and valuable to have a review. So consider today a review session. It's also a personal testimony. Well, here I am. That's it. There I am. 1975. I'm 26 years old. I thought I had followed the path that I had thought was the right way. I went to college. I went to the University of Maryland near here. After graduating, and it was a rather tumultuous time in the mid-70s. The anti-war movement was going on, Vietnam. I had questions. I had questions about life, and I'm sure, as you all do, and still might have questions. I wondered about what is the purpose of life? What kind of path does God have for me? And sure enough, I was led to a workshop. I was very, very fortunate because, in a sense, I felt I was prepared. As I say, I went to college, but after college, I was in the Peace Corps. I was in the Peace Corps for 3 years in South America. Let me tell you, for a white middle-class kid from a small town to go to South America, of course there are many developed areas, but where I was sent was extremely poor. I just never imagined poverty like that. I couldn't imagine it, James. It was just unbelievable. People living in shanties or huts built with plastic wrap, using the trees or the limbs that are nearby. I mean, essentially just a subsistence lifestyle and barely making it at best. I mean, every day I saw children going through the garbage cans. Again, that's not all the places, but this is where the places where they sent the Peace Corps volunteers. They wanted to humble us, in a sense. That's the point I wanted to make. I felt that I had learned about God's heart. I learned about the suffering heart that he felt when he saw this type of poverty in the world. And so when I came to the workshop, when I heard the divine principle and understood God as a father or a parent who had this type of empathy and sympathy for his children, they had me at hello. It was a no-brainer. I joined right away. But I think the most important point of the principle that struck me is our understanding about the spiritual world. This was kind of revolutionary for me. I mean, my understanding of religion is that I was suspicious. I did not have a very positive view of religion. All of the various icons and the various rituals, I had this suspicion that these were really ways of controlling people with fear. Well, if you don't go to church, you're going to end up in hell. If you don't do this, then you're going to pay the consequences. And so there was this, interesting symbols that we have all grown up with, seeing the devil with the pitchfork and burning in hell, those kinds of things I didn't like, but I also just felt intuitively that that was not the way God really made the plan. And so I was so relieved when I came to the workshop and heard this optimistic, positive view about life, that God has a plan, a dream, a positive ending as well, that we would become one with God in heart. So looking at the principle, this understanding for me, as I say, was rather revolutionary. That there are essentially a physical world and a spiritual world coinciding together, which we call in the Korean terms the Hyangsang and the Sangsang. So the way I was understanding the spiritual world, thanks to the principle, is this relationship between mind and body. The body, of course, is visible, it's substantial, it's here, this is it. But the mind can be anywhere. The mind is not limited by time or space in any capacity. I can be sitting down here, but in my mind, I'm orbiting the Earth with John Glenn, or I'm swimming in the Olympics with Michael Phelps. You know, there's no limitation of what's going on in the mind. I can be in Beijing, I can be in Seoul. Many times when I come home and my wife tells me who she does genealogy, I say, "Where have you been?" And she said, "Well, I've been in Scotland all day doing research on family trees," or I've been in Minnesota. You know, it's like the mind has that unlimited capacity to be anywhere at any time. So that's how I began to understand the spiritual world. It has that kind of unlimited ability or characteristic. So I began to realize that true parents gave us the principle, or revealed the principle. It's not only a guide to living in the physical world, but it's also a guide of how to live in the spiritual world. You know, it's because of the fall that things got messed up. But God has given us, through the principle, the various techniques and methods to live in the physical world, but also to prepare us for the spiritual world. There's a great expression that I always enjoy. It's something like, the two greatest days of your life are when you are born and when you understand your purpose. So when I went to the Divine Principle workshop, I understood my purpose in life. And maybe you all did too. You realize that we're not just sort of accidents of history, but that God gave us a purpose in life. And the principle reveals it, that we are to become one as an individual, mind and body, to fulfill the three blessings, and to become ultimately one with God. That's the purpose of life. So when you understand that, then your life takes on a whole different meaning. And you're all familiar with this diagram, the 3 stages of life that true parents have revealed to us. The 9 months in the womb, the approximate 100 years on this physical world, which is preparation. One is preparation for the next. Just like if you have a baby or that's growing in the woman's womb, there's a preparation time that's happening. Preparation for its lungs to be developed and all the various senses. And if everything is healthy, the baby is born into the physical world as a healthy being. And similarly, we have our time in the terrestrial world, and if everything is going okay, we're learning how to love, we're developing our love organs, we're living our love organs, and we're learning how to relate to one another. That prepares us to live in the spiritual world forever. Because the spiritual world is a place where love is the primary ingredient. It's an atmosphere of love. And I think perhaps in some places it might be more deeper and more thicker, and in other places it might be thinner. Oh, I pushed the button. After I received the principle, here I am 6 months later. I signed membership. So I got rid of my mustache and cut my hair and got rid of my VW bug and joined. I joined here in Washington, D.C. over at the American University. There used to be a CARPS center over there. And every day I would get up and they would, the IW sister, the Japanese sister, would give me 50 cents and a bag. And in the bag was a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And the 50 cents was to splurge on on a Coke or whatever, and she would just say, go to American University and witness. So that's what I did practically every day, and then on weekends, we went fundraising. So I did that for quite a number of years. So, I mean, the understanding about the spiritual world, and in many ways, it's almost like science fiction. I think I've seen some Star Trek episodes that had these kinds of understanding of parallel universes, and where we have this coexistence of different worlds going on. It does sound kind of science fiction, but that's how the spiritual world and the physical world really are. And it's only because of the fall that we lost this information, this powerful information of what life is really supposed to be about. And I think for me, it was very important when I began to understand spiritual world, because there are important consequences. If you don't believe that there is a spiritual world, then you have a very skewed understanding of humankind. And that's exactly how communism views humankind. In the 1970s, that was really the heyday of the communist movement around the world. They were all over Africa and many countries, of course Asia. But the communist view of man and woman is that they have no spirit. In other words, it's just like killing a person doesn't have any, there's no reason not to feel anything about that. You could just kill a person. It's just like hitting a piece of wood or breaking a chair. As long as that, because they don't understand that a person has a human spirit. All they see is a person with physical, materialistic side to it. So there's no value to it. So with that kind of ideology, they were able to justify killing thousands or millions of people in China and Russia and around the world. So this was a very important breakthrough understanding for me personally, to understand the implications of this view of life, the divine principle view of life, which recognizes that humankind has a spirit, and that spirit comes from God. The True Parent's son, Hyungjinim, ascended in 1984. And that was really a very critical time in the movement's history. That really began actually the first Seunghwa ceremony. That's when True Parents introduced the Seunghwa ceremony to the movement. And it was a very significant time. Of course, the word Seunghwa, we use it all the time now. But when I was researching recently, I found this wonderful quote by Dr. Pak. Dr. Pak was the one who was the MC or one of the speakers at the Seunghwa ceremony. And I put it in green. He said that Hyungjinim has Seunghwa'd to the spiritual world. Now, you notice that word? He put the ED on the end. In other words, he used it as a verb. A verb is an action step, like he jumped, or he sang, or he swam. It's an action step. So the word Seunghwa, when we say Seunghwa'd, we're really talking about an action that's going on. And then when True Father talked about it, he described it like an insect coming out of its cocoon, getting rid of a shackle, and becoming a new body. So many times we use the word transition. I think that's the best word to use in describing the Seunghwa. I don't even like the word ascend, because the word ascend means like you're going up. For me, it has like a Christian value to it, like you're going up to heaven, but I'm not sure we really mean that. We're transitioning from the physical world to the spiritual world. So Pastor Werner, maybe we could talk about that. Transition is really what's happening, moving from the physical world and becoming an exclusive spiritual body. So he's Seunghwa'd to the spiritual world. In 2006, True Parents talked about the fundamental duties and missions for citizens of Chunokuk. And there are 7 that he listed. Would you read the 7 points? Yeah, read them out loud.
Live for the sake of others. Live with our mind and body united as one. Work to engraft people into the true olive tree through the holy blessing. Prepare for life in the spirit world. Contribute funds for well-being and peace of humanity. Protect love and nature, and serve humanity under the banner of the UPF.
Thank you, Donnie. Let's give him a hand. These are very powerful points. You know, Father, I hope that you can remember this or look it up on your own. But this boils down to our duties. What is life? So, I mean, for me, you might think that, oh, my duty is to go to school and make a lot of money, or my duty is to get a house. You know, we think in certain terms, but here's what True Parents have said are the main points of life, the main duties that we all should follow in our life. And number 4, prepare for life in the spiritual world. So there it is. It's not number 1, but it's number 4 for True Parents. And I think it's very significant because, I mean, all of us are very intelligent people. You know, whatever we do, we prepare. You go to college, you prepare to buy a house, you prepare to buy a car, you prepare to have children, you prepare to go on a trip. You prepare. I mean, if you don't prepare, you're foolish. So why not prepare for spiritual world? Why not prepare for spiritual world? So here are several points in terms of preparing. Number 1 is follow the principle. Now, maybe these other points are very external. I mean, really the main preparation for spiritual world is developing the heart of living for the sake of others and having a faith in God, faith in True Parents. But there are other practical things we should be thinking about, and there's absolutely zero reason not to think about. Number 1 is to prepare a will. How many people have prepared a will? I only see about 4 hands. I can understand maybe the kids, but adults, there's no reason not to prepare a will. And it's just a simple document that you can download, and you simply legally state who is going to be the one who will take care of your estate. And I mean, don't assume that your spouse is going to be the one. These are things that have legal consequences if you do not have a will. Also, a living will. This is maybe unfamiliar to you, but this is when you state your desires in case you're not able to make a decision. I know this sounds horrible and it would never happen to you, but I can tell you it does happen where people do end up in a hospital after an accident, and the family has no idea what the father or this person wants in their life. Do they want to be kept alive artificially with equipment? Do they want to be taken care of, or how do they want to be taken care of? All these kinds of things are spelled out. One thing is called the 5 wishes, and that's something that you can download also. It's just 5 points that you write down how you want to be treated in case you cannot make a decision. Arrangements for the physical body and the Seunghwa Wanjon ceremony. Well, we have here at Fort Lincoln Cemetery, that is the Wanjon here in the Washington, D.C. area. It's been blessed by our True Parents. Many of our brothers and sisters are there, and there are plots that are for sale. They're approximately $2,500. Sounds like a lot, maybe it's not, but it's something simple that there's no reason that you can't just go ahead and get that out of the way. Buy the plot and forget about it. The insurance information, This is also very important. I know people have, maybe you have a life insurance plan, or maybe you have funeral insurance. These are all areas that you have to think about in terms of preparing for the spiritual world. Writing your autobiography. Sure, I mean, maybe you're not 60, maybe you're only 16, but you've already had many stories and how God has worked in your life. So take some time to write it out so you have a clear record. It's something that you can pass on to your children, your legacy. It's a wonderful way to just sort of reflect upon your life, how God has been working. And ancestor liberation and family trees. You know, we're not just ourselves, but we're part of our family, our tribe. So we need to have clarity between our relationships, between our ancestors. So these are some simple ideas that I'm just putting out there for you, and there's many more things that we could talk about. A number of years ago, I attended UTS, and I did a study, a dissertation, and I did my dissertation on the Seungwa ceremony. And what I wanted to discuss, or to research, was basically how unificationists view life and death versus non-unificationists. Is there any difference? I mean, does a Christian look at death differently than a unificationist? So I had a series of questions I just want to share with you. Well, have you attended a Seungwa? Well, of course, most of our members have. 90% have. It's unusual if someone hasn't. And have you purchased a plot? Only 25% of the people said yes. So interestingly, this is the same statistic for those who are not church members. For those who go to a Christian church, for example, you'll have the same statistic. Only if you walked into the Congregation Church or the Baptist Church down the street and asked that question, have you purchased a plot, only 25% of the people would say yes. So I thought that was rather interesting. How is it that we, who understand spiritual world, who have this sense that we've inherited from our true parents that it's coming, death is coming, so why not prepare? And yet, they're the same statistic as those who were not in our church. And then I asked, are you planning to purchase? And 64% said yes. So that's good, that's good. But I know buying a plot is just is just the first step. It's just a symbolic step in terms of preparation. So then I had a survey group, and I asked the question, why have you not purchased? What is stopping you? What is inhibiting you from preparing? And you can see there's two columns on the right, the UC members and the non-UC members. And marked in red under the UC, 35% of the people said that they were not ready to commit to a specific location. So for the most part, these are brothers and sisters, perhaps they're from Japan or they're international blessings, and they think perhaps they're going to go back to Japan or back to Korea or another country, I don't know. But they had hesitation. They don't feel they have roots here in Washington, D.C. And of course, people do move around. They move to be with their children or whatever reasons. But it was interesting, that was the first reason why, that they just were not willing to commit to Washington, D.C., even though members have been living here for 10, 20, 30 years. And the second reason was that they don't know what arrangements that they want. Now, this may mean that they don't understand the funeral industry, which is a very significant point. People don't understand what's involved with a funeral. But I can tell you, it's rather complicated. You can spend several hours when you go to the funeral home to go through all of the various options that they're going to discuss with you. What type of casket, metal, wood, fiberglass, what kind of flowers, cremation, embalming, what type of marker. And everything has a price tag attached to it. Everything has a price tag. So these are very significant decisions that have to be made, and it's best that they're not made the day before the funeral. In other words, these are things that can be made in advance. You can just get it out of the way so that when the time for the funeral comes, you can focus not on these types of general affairs, but on the emotional sharing and preparing and the grief, the saying goodbye, the joyful send-off. All those things are far more important than dealing with paying a funeral home. That's another reason that we really strongly suggest that people prepare, take care of these things. And this can be done today, it could be done far in advance. And you can get an insurance policy to cover these things so that you can stretch out the payments. Because if you wait until the time of the death, then everything has to be paid up front, or a credit card for 1 month. So there's also financial reasons, benefits, for dealing with this now, preparing. And the third reason was that people did not have money. So that was interesting, because I kind of assumed that the reason people were not buying the plots was because they didn't have the money. But that wasn't the case. That wasn't the case. And of course, having money or not having money should not be an impediment either, because we're happy to work with you and set up an installment plan just to set it up over several years. It doesn't matter. So it's interesting to compare this now to the non-UC members. The first reason for non-UC members not to purchase, not to prepare, is number one. They don't want to think about dying. It's just too ugly for them to even imagine dying. I'm going to leave my family, my children, my friends. They just completely put it out of their minds. Number two, that they're not ready to commit to a specific location. And number three was the money issue. So it's interesting that money is not actually the first reason, but it's the last reason. Here's some more words from True Parents. True Father talked about his final list, his checklist. Another reader? James?
Number 1, go over the last border. Listen to original mind. 2, learn and follow God's Hyeongsang, heart and divine character. Live for the sake of others. 3, don't commit sins. Lead a life aligned with God as at high noon, where no shadow is cast. 4, live and die for the sake of the world. 5, work as hard as you can. 6, work for the public. 7, embody love.
Thank you. Let's give it up for James. So Father revealed this list in 1998, about a dozen years before his own passing. Again, this is how Father looks at life. Like, he's not talking about accumulating wealth, the car in the driveway. This is how his mind has always worked, in his terms of preparing for transition to the spiritual world. I want to show you a very amazing quote from True Father. When I read this quote, I have to say my jaw just dropped to the table, because this shows the amazingness of God. God has a plan for everything. God has a plan for life and for death. I'll read it. He says, True Father says, the purpose of death. Can you imagine? The purpose of death. The reason we must die is that our body's ability to love is limited. If we want to possess God's true authority as his object partner of true love, our limited bodies will not suffice. This is why we have to make the transformation to being an incorporeal spirit. This will enable us to share the ideal of love equally with all of heaven and earth. For this reason, The moment of death is not a path of pain, but instead is the starting point of opening the gate of happiness through which we can possess universal love. Now, maybe it's something you have to kind of ponder and think about. You know, in a way, we've been tricked. The devil has made us to think in a certain way about death and funerals, but it's completely false. You know, if you ask the average person, well, why does a person die? They'll talk about, well, your body organs stop, or maybe that's just tough luck, or, you know, all these types. It's in the DNA that it's going to self-destruct and so forth. There's all kinds of reasons, but look at this quote by True Father. Father is saying that dying is all part of the plan, because God wants to bring us absolutely in oneness with him, in oneness with the Heavenly Parent. So this was part of the plan from the very beginning, that we would live in this physical world, learning from the school of love all the various realms of heart, and then the body would die, and then we would come absolutely in contact with heaven. We cannot know God unless we get rid of this body. This body is stopping us from fully embracing God. That to me is a very profound way of looking at life, that this life has purpose, that death has a purpose to bring us at one with God. So I really recommend taking this quote and just thinking about it. The purpose of death. It's not bad. Death is not bad, which is what society tells us. Death is not bad, but rather it is all part of God's plan to bring us closer to him. So recently, True Mother was quoted as saying, "Don't be afraid." She's talking about many things, but she's saying, most importantly, I know things are hard. I know things can be difficult for you, but please, just unite with me. Don't be afraid. Things are going to work out just right here in this physical world and especially in the spiritual world. So don't be afraid of death. Just have a clear understanding of the principle, a clear appreciation of true parents, and a clear appreciation that Heavenly Parent is doing what's best for all of us. So turn to your neighbor now and say, don't be afraid. Heavenly Parent loves you. Thank you very much.
So there's nothing to be afraid of. Thank you, Dr. Selig. Amen. I think that's was practical and very far thinking. Today we have a kind of a double feature here. We're going to ask Chris Kenedy to come up and give us a short version of the Divine Principle program that he has done in Las Vegas. He and Laura Ortiz have gone to Las Vegas and gone to a 7-day program to create a new standard of Divine Principle lectures, and I want to show you an example here. So we're going to ask Chris Kenedy to come up and give his presentation.
Oh, that is bright. Good. Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Kenedy. If you haven't seen me before, I'm the tall guy in the back. So, I recently... Better? Good. So this past week, Laura Ortiz and I went to Las Vegas where we had a 7-day seminar essentially to learn how to teach a 1-day DP lecture encompassing the entirety of the divine principle and a bit about our movement and what the blessing ceremony entails. The idea is that we want to create a very well summarized version that we can just kind of give on the fly as we need to. I would encourage everyone here to attend one of these 7-day seminars so that they can learn to give these lecture series. They're very good. They straighten out a lot of your own misunderstandings about the principle, and they present a good platform to teach others. What I would like to do is present maybe the first half of Principle of Creation. Does that work? If I can get this to work. It's not going to work.
You got to bring up the viewer.
The viewer, you say?
Yeah. RDNC viewer.
Why don't you come up here and you do it? We installed this like 5 minutes ago. I have no idea what the software does. I have a server and a viewer, but I don't have a password for our... No. I mean, I can always do this for you, pantomime. I don't need crutches like slides.
In the meantime, I can say that the workshop itself was actually very intense. We started at 6 a.m. and finished about 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. And it was all about learning to give lectures. You have to, every single day, it was nothing but giving lectures of the entire principle, and we went through the entire principle probably about 3 or 4 times through the 7 days. We had to do a very short presentation. Everyone, all the participants had to do a presentation at the end, about 15 minutes. We only had 15 minutes for the presentation, and then we were given about 10 minutes to prepare our presentation. But it was, and we didn't get to choose our subject matter, our subject. Actually, you picked out of a hat the subject that they wanted you to give. So it was actually very challenging, but it was a great, wonderful experience. Most of the participants, I have to say, were the second gen. We had about 27 participants altogether, including Chris and I, and 90% were second gen. So we were really, really proud, and we all learned a lot from each other. Oh, no, are you controlling that?
Are you controlling?
Okay, click on the PowerPoint icon. That should bring your presentation up.
Just a second. Oh, okay, yeah, your computer is there. Yeah. Got it. I choose... No, not that one.
I don't think he opened it.
Did you already download the PowerPoint on that side? Because I'm seeing like 3 PowerPoints and none of them are mine.
What do you mean? He has it on his laptop, so he has to click on the icon here.
So, did you know that Las Vegas actually used to be an ocean? Yeah, it's pretty neat, right?
Yeah.
No matter how dry the air is, it turns out that you would have drowned there about 5 million years ago. Uh-huh. That land you're stepping on, that used to be a whale. It's amazing what environmental and climate change can do, isn't it? If you just wait long enough, millions and millions of years. Why? I found it most interesting while we were at the workshop to be around so many other people who discussed in very serious terms how to teach the divine principle. Most of the workshop just consisted of us kind of talking at each other for a while. In fact, about 9 hours a day was us lecturing one another. So we had people from all across the US who just had their own unique lecture styles. And we quickly realized that being unique is not what you want. Having your own unique style leads to confusion. What you want is standardization. So that's what we did. We got a series of slides and very, very well optimized layouts, and we learned how to use those, and we realized that no matter how good you thought you were on your own, you're much better with a standard layout. So, all you free thinkers, remember that. Oh, it's working. Okay. Okay, it's mostly working. How about? Good enough. All right. So, here we go. This is the... All right, so this is the principle of creation as told in the condensed 1-hour version. You're not going to get the whole thing. Now, once again, I'm Chris Kenedy. I'm going to be presenting an overview of the principle, and if we were here for the entire day, I would give you also an overview of the fall, of restoration, and of who true parents are and what the blessing ceremony is. Now, to begin, ignore that. The divine principle seeks to answer life's most critical questions. I got this, Laura. Right. And we're going to talk about Reverend Moon. Are you doing that? All right. My controls appear to have ceased controlling this. Yeah, my laptop is no longer controlling what's up here. Another lesson, never try new software when you're about to give a talk. Well, it was working up here, and then something changed. All right. So as you can see, you cannot control things. You are not in control. God is in control. So what I'm saying is, God's doing this. Nonetheless, we each have a portion of responsibility that we need to pay up. And my portion of responsibility was to make sure the software worked. As we can see, it is humans who lead to failure in the providence. Now. Oh, okay, this looks good. Nope. Can I just use the clicker that they were doing before? It's on the podium? All right. Huh. You know, I really don't know how it turned into a PDF view. is interesting. Well, never mind that. Let's just go again. Sometimes things fail the first time, but it doesn't matter. As far as God is concerned, as long as it works eventually, it's good enough. So, what is the point of life? Well, everyone inherently seeks happiness, right? Even if you don't know why you're looking for happiness or how exactly you want to find it, you know that you want it. This is a good and natural thing. And indeed, we could say that happiness is the ideal of creation. This is going to bother me. Unfortunately, we find within ourselves an inherent contradiction that leads away from happiness. Things that we believe will make us happy oftentimes make us miserable instead. And we find this propagated on all levels of society, both individually, where we think, maybe just one more donut. What's the harm it could do? Well, 10 years later, we know the answer. Or other times, we'll find that things that appear to be a shortcut to happiness oftentimes lead to greater unhappiness. And even though we know this internally, we end up doing these things anyway. There is this contradiction that just constantly attacks your mind and changes the way you think things might work out. So we find that although we have an ideal of happiness to which we aspire, a sustainable happiness, if you will, that oftentimes we take the shortcut and through a self-centered view of life, we end up reaching a greater level of unhappiness instead. And this is the strangeness that permeates society. Nonetheless, we find ourselves desiring to escape this contradiction in order to restore that desire for happiness that is sustainable and good for the entirety of society. We call this process restoration, restoring ourselves from a state of contradiction into a state of happiness. Unfortunately, although people desire to reach that state of happiness and to sort of do away with the contradiction, they don't really understand how. We have tried many, many different ways over the ages, but it's sort of like if you have a smartphone. For most people, a smartphone is a black box. You have no idea how it works, only that you can make calls on it, it acts as a phone, you can do a lot of things on it. You don't know how, but if your phone were to break, you would take it to be repaired, right? You believe that someone must know how that phone works. So perhaps you drop your phone, it cracks, and you take it to the shop. The guy looks at it kind of quizzically and he brings it back to you in an hour. Well, great, the phone turns on, but it doesn't do anything. So you take it back. Guy tinkers with it for a while and you can make calls, but you can't open any apps. You repeat this process a few times and eventually you realize the repairman also does not understand your phone. We see the same situation with a lot of different philosophies and religions where everyone tries their best to erase this contradiction for society, to bring people to lasting, sustainable happiness. But in the end, they don't really understand the origin of the problem. They just fix the symptoms as they come across them. And it's that ignorance that really plagues human beings, that lack of understanding of where does unhappiness come from? Why do we contradict our own happiness? Why do we lead to our own destruction? And we found that over time, we've been gradually coming out of that ignorance, that with the development of philosophy and ethics in human society, we have gradually become more sustainably happy, even if we never quite fulfill our ideal. In the unification movement, our answer to life's question of how to become happy and how to sustain that happiness is developed in the Divine Principle by Reverend Sun Myung Moon. I would like to read you this quote, but it's a little out of focus. Thank you, Laura. You have to know the heart of God at creation, before creation, his heart during the process of creation, and his grieving heart after the fall. You have to understand the sorrowful heart with which he has been leading human history toward restoration, and his heart of hope for a new world after restoration is completed. In other words, if you don't know how things were created, if you don't know the origin of things, how can you understand what they ought to be and how they've fallen away from that ideal and how they can be restored? Those three primary questions are the questions of life. Laura, could you scroll up a little bit? Thank you. Now, what we find is that many people might want to know God's heart, but many more people, they can't just decide one day, I want to know God now. If they spent their entire life, if they come from a long family line of people who do not want to know God, who deny God's very existence, or that God has any sort of character, then they can't just wake up one day and decide, I want to know God. We use the example of a man who has dug a deep hole underground, 1,000 feet. He might decide one day, you know what, it'd be nice to feel the sun. Well, he's in a hole. He can't just decide he wants the sunlight now. He has to go out of the hole before he can do that. In other words, if you want to know God's heart, you need to expend effort. You can't just decide, I want this now. It's something that you have to go and do. In the same way, you can't just decide the origin all of a sudden. You have to make effort to understand the origin. There's a process. Thank you. No, stop that. Well, we've gone on ahead. That's okay. Now, many people will decide that God does not exist. For the sake of this presentation, we would ask that you assume God does exist, for a few simple reasons. First, if God exists, then the fundamental questions of life have an answer. There is no meaningless staring into the void in that case. Second, if there are answers to life's questions, it is possible that we can have a better life and a better world. In other words, this is not a fruitless process as long as God exists. So let's move onward. All right. So, assuming God exists, what form does God take? Well, we say that God is the source of time and space. If you're a computer scientist, you might say that God is the system. Now, the thing is that this means God is big. Not just physically, but metaphysically. God is so big that we actually can't discern him. You who are inside the system cannot feel out the entire system. And so people often say that God is invisible. Well, that's a fair enough thing. Does that mean that it's impossible, that there's no way to know God? Not necessarily. In the same way that someone who creates a piece of art reveals part of their personality through their artwork. And this is really true. If you look at different painters, you can tell there were some weird things going on in there. I mean, just look at what happened to Picasso. You can discern the origin and the nature of an artist through what they have created. And God is no different. If you look at the things of creation, you can see God's personality and the way that God works. And what we learn from observing this is that God has dual characteristics, that God has an internal nature that determines how he does things, and an external form that shows how he actually goes about things. So an internal desire and an external way of doing it. We say mind and body. Yeah, we'll just keep going. All right. We also note that God has polarity, positive and negative, plus, minus, masculinity and femininity. And this isn't just an artsy thing, this is true. This binary exists at all levels of creation. going down from the most basic fundamental particle up to the highest level of organism. This tendency to polarize into plus and minus, into one form or another, is an intrinsic part of nature. And we see this also in human beings, of course. Human beings who are created in God's image as male and female. When we examine the universe, we see that all things exist in pairs relating to one another as subject and object partners. In the mineral world, we observe the relationship between plus and minus particles. In the plant world, the animal world, and the world of human beings, we see the relation between masculine and feminine aspects. This is because God created the universe in order to fulfill the expression of love. All right. So we've now determined that God has dual characteristics. But we see also that God is one entity. And we say that there must be some way for God to express those distinct, unique characteristics. We call this a process of division. God, the origin, divides his internal dual characteristics into two discrete, unique forms. And the most fundamental expression of this is subject and object, actor and acted upon. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We say the mechanism by which these interactions take place is universal prime energy, which is a self-existent, eternal, and absolute form of energy that characterizes the interactions of God's dual characteristics. Through the action of universal prime energy, we find that these distinct internal dual characteristics of God are able to interact together based upon that origin. But rather than just coming back and forming God again, they remain unique and distinct, and together they form something new, something that we call the union. We also see this in nature. We have God forming into distinct entities as positive and negative, into protons and electrons. And the proton and electron, although they are distinct entities and they do come together, do not smush together to form a neutron. Rather, they form an atom. And if you want to get into the nuances of what protons are actually made of, we can talk later. But you'll see it still fits. Now, this general scheme of origin, division, and union in the divine principle is called the four-position foundation. And the four-position foundation is, in our terminology, the foundation of goodness. It is the fundamental unit by which God can express his creation. And you can apply the four-position foundation to anything that you find, to any relationship. Now, the very most fundamental four-position foundation from God's point of view must be the family. Within the family, where you have God, a husband, and a wife, you have them forming together to create children. Up. Yes. Now, why is the family important? Because we find within the family all the distinct relationships of human society. In other words, human beings who are made in God's image can express all the fundamental relationships that they are capable of expressing in the family unit. You have parents and children, you have siblings, you have husband and wife, you have children for their parents and parents for their children, which are distinct types of love. In other words, these four realms of heart are all present within the family unit. And that is why the family is an important entity. We actually expound on this a little bit when Reverend Moon writes in his peace messages, I invite you to enter into a transcendent state and prayerfully ask God, what is the center of the universe? The answer you will hear will undoubtedly be the parent-child relationship. Nothing is more important than the relationship between parent and child. This is because it defines the fundamental relationship between the Creator God and human beings. All right, well, let's go ahead and take this full circle. We have God, who starts as an invisible origin because he makes up the entire cosmos. And then God externally forms energy, energy which allows for other things to exist. Oh. Yeah, that's good. And so that energy, you may remember the idea of E equals mc squared. Energy equals mass. So energy literally is mass. It literally is all the things of creation formed up together. And so you have God expressing energy which forms into particles and atoms and molecules, plants, animals, and all the distinct things of creation until you form human beings. Well, remember, human beings are made in the image of God. They are the visible expression of God's love. This is an important point that we're going to get back to. Yeah, keep going. All right. No, now go up. Up. Okay. So now we know that God created, and we know more or less we know the way that God created. But we do not know why God created. Why go through all the effort? This is a very important question. You have to consider, if we don't know why God created, we cannot know the purpose of life. We cannot know how to fulfill that purpose of life, and we cannot know how to expend the eternity lying before us. Therefore, we have to explore, why did God create? And as it turns out, the answer is pretty simplistic. It's the same reason anyone does anything. God created people and created everything else because he wanted joy from his creation. Generally speaking, you don't make something to make you unhappy. If you're going to expend your time and effort on something, it's because you want some sort of happiness out of it. You want some sort of positive give and receive action from that. And God's no different. God created everything for the sake of returning joy. Now, how are we to do that? How do we return joy to God, our Creator? This then would be the purpose of life, the manual of how to fulfill that purpose. And that's actually in Genesis, just a few pages in. The 3 great blessings: to be fruitful, multiply, and have dominion over the whole earth. Let's examine what these blessings mean. The first blessing, to be fruitful, is really indicative of a person who is a perfect individual. Now, what do we mean by that? We don't mean that you never make any mistakes. Even people who are really good are going to stumble every now and then. By perfection, rather, we mean attaining maturity, attaining a personal maturity in your body and your mind, because God, your origin, has also divided his dual characteristics to create you, to create your mind and to create your body. And once you become mature, you can enter into a 4-position foundation wherein you generate a true person based upon that maturity. What does that mean to be a true person, really? Well, when you are a mature person based on this 4-position foundation, once you fulfill the first blessing, that means you become a literal temple of God's heart. Wherever you go, God is. And that means that you feel as God feels, you think as God thinks, and you act as God would want to act. In other words, you are a roving incarnation of the Creator. You have your own personality, but God can trust you with his heart. That's what it means to fulfill the first blessing. The most famous example of someone who fulfilled the first blessing would be Jesus Christ, who more than anyone understood what God's heart needed. But there are 3 blessings, and the second is this. To multiply is exactly what it sounds like, is to have a family, to expand. Now, we've already talked about the family as a four-position foundation, being the fundamental foundation for goodness, really, in a godly society. God, husband, wife, and child form the four great realms of heart, wherein all different relationships of human society exist and are matured. But the second blessing is not limited to one family. It isn't just one child. You yourselves probably have siblings. So you already know the second blessing is expansive. One more. We find that the family actually procreates further to create societies, nations, even the entire world. And that's what it's supposed to do. The second blessing is about expansion. And then the third blessing, this is the one that's most famous and that human society has spent the most time on. True dominion, however, is different from what you often see. What you tend to see in many parts of the world is an exploitation of the natural world, a sort of, I'm going to take everything and give nothing back type of attitude. Well, it's true that humans are meant to have dominion, but you have to have a certain level of stewardship in order to be worthy of that dominion. From God's point of view, human beings in the natural world need to have an unselfish form of love that they interact with through his mediumship in order to form what we call the dominion of love. And so, by fulfilling these three great blessings, you fulfill the purpose of creation. You bring joy to God. From the individual, the society, to the entire created world, working in oneness based upon God. And it is in doing these things and fulfilling these blessings that you have a true value. Previously, in the speech before this, we talked about how everyone has to go eventually. And that's true. You can't bring it with you. Of course, the pharaohs tried very hard with their pyramids stacked with gold, but you still can't bring what you have on earth with you. Rather, the degree to which you have fulfilled these blessings is the merit that decides how you feel about yourself once you enter the spirit world. Now, no one is born perfect, of course. We find that all things in creation have a growing period, going from a formative to a development to a completion stage. And this is actually related to that origin, division, union action we had before. When we come to how we actually grow, we see that all things in creation, other than human beings, develop automatically. You just give them some light, some water, maybe a little bit of soil, and they'll grow up. They'll do what they need to do, just guided by God's natural laws. But human beings are different. Humans have a body and they have a spirit. You've probably met a number of people who are definitely adults, but they're basically children on the inside. Being young on the inside is not the same thing as being a child. And you've probably noticed that. Some people are more mature than others. Is that their fault? Well, actually, yes, it is. Because in order for humans to reflect God, they have a portion of responsibility. Because God's heart is free, God's heart is free to love, human beings' hearts are free to love as well. Which means that you need to choose whether to love something or to hate something. This, then, is the possible point of contradiction, whether you choose to become mature or you choose to remain immature. However, we find that if we fulfill God's command to go through the three blessings, then it is possible for us to become mature. But as you would see in the next lecture of this series, God's guidance is not just the three blessings, it's also a commandment, which you see in Genesis, which is, do not eat of the fruit. We don't have time to go over what that means right now. We still don't have time to go over what that means right now. There we go. Now, we discussed this a great deal in the last talk that was up here. But there is a duality to existence itself, of spirit and of flesh, a spirit world and physical world. Why should this be so? Why does a spirit world exist alongside a physical world? Well, many of you may think because God wanted a mediator between physical and spiritual worlds. This is actually backwards, though. The entire creation was created with the template of a human being, not the other way around. In other words, there's a spirit world and a physical world because humans have a spirit and a body, because they have those dual characteristics. Everything in creation exists the way it does because human beings are in the image of God. Everything is planned around the idea that humans have to have a certain form of dual characteristics, internal and external. In terms of the nature of spirit world and physical world, we see that we have a spiritual body and a physical body, but one of these doesn't last forever. We know from painful experience that our physical life is a temporary one. The spirit lasts forever, but the physical body decays over time. This does not mean your physical life is unimportant, but more about that in a minute. Let us consider the fundamental relationship between your spiritual body and your physical body. It's not as if they just kind of float around separately doing their own thing. They actually have a connection. And to understand that, we need to know how your physical and spiritual bodies develop and mature, because neither one starts perfect. For the physical body, this is easy to explain. We deal with it every day. We feel hunger and thirst. We know what we need. Sunlight, air, water, food, these are the things your body needs from the physical side. Your spirit, however, also needs things. We call these life elements. Life elements come from God, from God's love and God's truth. And they strengthen your spirit and help it to develop. No, we're not done yet. There's more on there. Now, the connection between the physical and spiritual body is also important because spirit and flesh actually have give and take. They exchange elements with each other. These living spirit elements here on the top, those are the things your spirit gives to your body that strengthen your body and help it to heal. So if you've heard of faith healing, that's a really condensed level of living spirit elements. It doesn't mean you can just go around doing it. No. And this thing on the bottom, vitality elements, those are actually more important in many ways. When your body does something, it undergoes some activity, it has some relationship in the physical world, what it sends to the spirit are those vitality elements. And it's based on the energy of those vitality elements that your spirit matures and changes. In other words, what your spirit becomes is based upon what your body does. Yeah. In overview, human beings exist in 3 stages. We exist in a world of water in our mother's womb. We exist caught up in the air in the physical world. And then we exist forever in the spirit world of love. But just because our physical life is temporary does not make it unimportant, as mentioned earlier. In Matthew, we see, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Loosely translated, this means that anything you do on earth matters. That the ways that you free your spirit on earth, you will remain free in. And the ways you trap yourself on earth, you will be trapped in spirit world. In other words, again, the physical world, although temporary, is more valuable than your spiritual life. Because everything that matters happens on earth. And given how little time you have, granted by God in your physical life to grow, I'm glad that you listened to me talk about this. So, if you want to know more, we can do this again some other time. All right. Good job.
Did you like that? So I think we're going to be having more workshops. I feel it. More workshops. Thank you, Chris and Laura. And next Sunday, we'll give a chance to Laura to give a presentation to show a little more. We'll have also kind of splitting next Sunday. We'll do a testimony chance. The Eberleys are going to continue. They've continued their quest for 430 couples. They followed up with the people they've given the candy to get the names and to reach out and go beyond. So we'll hear their update on their testimony, and Laura will give her presentation. But I really liked what Chris did. I think Chris used some short but very concise sentences that really, it really flowed, and he went through the entire principle of creation in really a very short period of time. And I was very impressed. So thank you very much for going and for bringing back that result. Incidentally, anybody who wishes to go to the next workshop, it will be from the 18th to the 25th of July in Las Vegas. And I believe for second and third generation members, there will be a discount. The stay and the lectures will be $250. That's room and board and the material. $250 with the discount, and of course you find your own way there by airplane and so on. So if you have interest, grown up, adult, first gen, second gen, or third gen, you can come to me about this, or you can also directly go to the IPEC website to enroll. Thank you very much. Let us now circulate our offering baskets and conclude our service.
I'm going to go ahead and welcome up our young brother, Nestor, to give the prayer offering.
Please join me in prayer. Thank you, God, for allowing everybody to be here at church today to listen to this lecture. Hopefully, everybody has a great day and we eat this delicious food. And hopefully, God will be in our lives today more than before. And hopefully, everybody has a wonderful day. I pray to my name was not, and bless us with family. I Jew.
Thank you, brother man. All right. Well, wow, what an amazing experience to hear such in-depth content today. I'm really grateful. I think that's amazing to hear the reason why we need to understand what Chris said to prepare ourselves for the next life and also for our families, so we don't need to worry about that kind of thing. Don't be afraid. Awesome. So let's not be afraid. Everyone stand up. We're going to sing one final song to close out our service. Do not be afraid to sing as loud as you can with as much passion as you can. Awesome. Take me through the doorway. In the kingdom
lives a man of many years. He's always there, you know. When the lights have all gone out and you are snug in bed, on a journey to the kingdom, you are softly led. Come on! Take me through the doorway, lead me to the land where Father's love is flowing freely, children hand in hand. In the house where He abides, the table set for all. There's a fire always burning, can't you hear Him call? There's a path that you can find if you believe it's there. Follow it with all your heart, there's joy for all to share. Come on! Take me through the doorway, lead me to the land where Father's love is flowing freely, children hand in hand. Let's go, first verse. In the kingdom of our hearts where dreams like rivers flow, lives a man of many years. He's always there, you know. And when the lights have all gone out and you are snug in bed, on a journey to the kingdom, you are softly led. Let's go! And take me through the doorway, lead me to the land where Father's love is flowing freely, children hand in hand. Second verse. In the house where He abides, the table set for all. You're all welcome. There's a fire always burning, can't you hear Him call? There's a path that you can find if you believe it's there. So follow it with all your heart, there's joy for all to share. Let's go! Take me through the doorway, hey! Lead me to the land where Father's love is flowing freely, children hand in hand. Take me through the doorway, whoa! Lead me to the land where Father's love is flowing freely, children hand in hand. Here we go! And take me through the doorway, lead me to the land where Father's love is flowing freely, children hand in hand. Where Father's love is flowing freely, children hand in hand. Thank you so much for joining us for Sunday service today. God bless you. Have a beautiful week. Let's give it up for Hyungju Hyung one more time. And our speakers and our brave young man here. Thank you all. See you next Sunday.